Hey there, you sexy pre-evolved space salamander you. It's that time of year again where I'm going to get incredibly annoying and say, fuck it, who needs to make smart, algorithmically friendly channel growth helping videos on this channel that is my livelihood, in which if it all burns down I won't be able to pay my bills, because screw that, I'm going to rant at you for an hour about my favorite show in my favorite franchise, because Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3 just ended, baby, and I just want to talk about it. I've been making some incredibly difficult videos recently about transphobia and challenging topics and all that horrible stuff, and to be quite honest with you, it has left me kind of anxious and riddled with self-doubt about my writing skills right now, so I just need to make a video that is healthy for my soul. So I'm just gonna rant at you about why Star Trek Lower Decks is honestly the show that I need in my life right now, and is honestly one of the things that brings me so much joy every single time I watch it. I'm gonna go through every single episode of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3 and just tell you why it was freaking amazing, why I loved it. To the 10 of you who actually watched all of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3 along with me, I hope you'll enjoy this. To the rest of you, I hope just a nerdy, autistic trans girl ranting about something that she really loves will also bring you joy. So with that said, ready your ancestrally possessed gothic sex candle ghosts, because it's time to talk about Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3. Yeah, take that, you stupid Tuvix, you Oh, hello there, Lower Deckers! I hope you're all doing well. I was just, playing with my brand new phaser toy. It makes a fun noise. I'm a child. Anywho, clearly, if you're watching this video, you like overly obsessive people talking knowledgeably about incredibly nerdy and niche topics. And I love doing it, but I do also want to tell you how I'm actually able to continue to do videos like this. The YouTube algorithm is like a phaser to the face sometimes, and also, as some of you know, I recently had larger issues with YouTube here on this channel that I won't get into here. You can look it up if you're curious about that event. But because of all of that, one of the ways that I'm able to push back against those issues when they come up with YouTube, as well as give myself certainty that I'm going to be able to pay the bills each and every month, is number one, through my wonderful, amazing patrons who I adore, and then number two, the amazing folks over at Nebula. For those of you who don't know, Nebula is a Streamy Award-nominated, curated streaming platform that allows me and some of my other fellow hyper-obsessive educational-style YouTube creators like PhilosophyTube, Princess Weeks, and FD Signifier, and numerous others to have a place to make videos away from the algorithm worries. And I guarantee you, if you like my stuff, you're gonna love all the people over on Nebula, and there's some really great things going on over there. And I myself personally release a lot of my videos and even some exclusive videos over on Nebula, like my recently censored Matt Walsh video, which is uncensored over on Nebula. You can also get yourself Nebula-specific series, such as Anita Sarkeesian's That Time When, where she's going to even have a specific Star Trek-related episode coming soon. I've actually gotten to see it, and it's really cool. And on top of all of that, if you want to get two streaming services in one of the major ways that Nebula is itself supported is through its partnership with the awesome Curiosity Stream. Curiosity Stream loves independent creators and those of us with phasers and wants to help our growth on our platform, so they're offering all of you viewers free access to Nebula when you sign up at curiositystream.com/jessiegender. Also, by signing up over there, you get a 26% discount on an annual plan for just $14.79. It's like they're phasering the savings. Look, I was trying to make it relevant in some way, shape, or form. Don't say that I don't try with these ads. But by signing up with Curiosity Stream, you get access to thousands of documentaries, including tons of ones about space and science, because I know you're all nerds out there. And by signing up to Curiosity Stream, you're not going to just be helping me out, as well as just support your own nerdy pursuits. So as always, thank you, all of you watching this. Thank you to Curiosity Stream for sponsoring this video, and a thank you to Nebula and my patrons for making this video possible. But with all that said, don't forget to subscribe or I'll phase you like Tuvix. This is getting really hostile with the phaser. Anyways, on with my breakdown while breaking down Lower Decks Season 3. Oh, you thought I was kidding about the sex ghost candles? No. I have my Star Trek sex ghost candle right here. We're gonna summon the spirit of Patrick Stewart, who is thankfully still alive right now, but we're still gonna summon his sexy spirit. And it's gonna be lit right off camera. There's a table here. You cannot probably see it at all, but just trust me, it's there. Anyways, let's talk about the first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3, Grounded. The premiere of Season 3 had a lot of heavy lifting to do, what with the cliffhanger ending of Season 2, where Captain Freeman was arrested for the explosion of the Packlet planet. Still, the episode not only managed to pay off that storyline, but did so in an unexpected way that does what Lower Decks always does, manages to critique and uphold Star Trek values simultaneously. Mariner, as a character, has always had a rebellious nature, pushing as much as she can against Starfleet's regulations that sometimes get in the way of Starfleet's intentions for the greater good, at least in her mind.
So sorry, I made sure that some humble farmers who can't afford to wait for Starfleet bureaucracy to notice them got some help so they didn't have to starve.
And Mariner's distrust in the Starfleet system's ability to do right leads her to band together with the Beta Shifters to sneak aboard the Cerritos to get Boimler's logs, which she hopes might exonerate her mother, Captain Freeman.
Now, something went down on Packlet Planet, and they want a Cali-class captain to take the fall. The bridge crew are under constant attack. It's up to us to do something.
I know where the Cerritos is.
Also during this sequence, I just love how quickly and readily the Beta Shifters are willing to stick together and fight for their captain in true Starship loyalty. Like, we all know in Star Trek that it's not a real crew if you're not willing to commit a little bit of a mutiny for your captain.
That's an order. No uniform, no orders.
I can't ask you to go any further. Dr. McCoy and I have to do this. The rest of you do not.
Admiral, we're losing precious time.
What course, please, Admiral?
What's a little mutiny amongst friends, huh?
Saddle up. Lock and load.
I also, by the way, adored seeing Boimler on his raisin vineyard in a hilarious send-up of Jean-Luc Picard's famous family vineyard. And that scene on the vineyard, by the way, also leads to something that many of us fans have started to pick up on with the character of Boimler, the fact that he might actually be autistically coded.
Take me to the privacy of the Pickery shed and explain them to me.
Come on, Mandalina. Red goes in the red bucket, white in the white. You know that.
Boimler, you are my lovely neurodivergent baby, and I adore you. We also see Tendi and Rutherford on a date at Sisko's Creole kitchen from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which makes me very happy that Sisko the Elder is apparently still around. Not only is that a fantastic reference, but I love how subtly Lower Decks has continued storylines in the background of things, such as the Tendi-Rutherford romance, by having them on a date here, without actually drawing a lot of attention to it within the show's text. And then from there, we also get a fun little romp to meet Starfleet's nicest transporter chief. He is everyone's grandpa.
No way, he's like my grandpa. He's everyone's grandpa.
Butterscotch.
But then from there, we get the absolute joy that was the crew visiting historic Bozeman, the site of Zefram Cochrane's first warp flight from Star Trek First Contact. And of course, us humans, being the weirdo dorks that we are, would have made that into a theme park, complete with a Phoenix ride whose line is oddly reminiscent of a particular Star Wars-themed Disneyland ride. Also, James Cromwell back as Cochrane. Great, love it, no notes.
All right, buccos, prepare for your trek amongst the stars.
But all this leads to a fantastic sequence where the Beta Shifters discover that Boimler's logs are ultimately useless, and they need to trust Starfleet. And this is something that Mariner can't ultimately do, so she sends her shipmates off so they won't get in trouble as she steals the Cerritos in a headstrong, silly plan. Yet, as Lower Decks as a show always does, the show highlights how friends are willing to care for each other, and by doing so sometimes means that you have to challenge each other, as the Beta Shifters save Mariner from her self-destructive impulses and distrusting nature, leading to a genuinely emotional moment for Mariner where she has to come to terms with her fears that she can't always be in control.
They put her in handcuffs, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. They could take her away forever, and I can't stop it, and I'm just so scared.
Hey, whatever happens down there, we're gonna be right beside you.
Yeah, we're in this together.
It's a beautiful character moment that comes out of not only all of the character building that we've seen from Mariner in the past 2 seasons, where she has always wanted to just be the one to be in charge of everything and having to realize that she can't be, but also sets up her arc for the rest of the season, where she needs to realize that she can ultimately rely on those around her. And this trust in this episode is paid off because, as it turns out, Captain Freeman was exonerated by Starfleet without any help from the lower deckers.
Wow, Starfleet really came through. Who'd have thought?
Me, Beckett. I told you from the start to trust in the system. I said it this morning.
I saw many Trekkies out there who saw this ending, complete with Kelsey Grammer and Tim Russ visual cameos, as a cop-out, but I found it intriguing. This twist, that ultimately everything turned out fine, reminds us that Lower Decks is not a show about those in charge, but about those who aren't in control of the events around them. And it's a theme that is highlighted in Mariner's character arc itself as well. Further though, this ending underscores what we all love about Star Trek, that it is showing us a future where the system can work for everybody. Now, admittedly, there is a certain uncomfortability that I have watching the ending because it is ultimately saying that yes, we can trust the system to do right by people. And the reason that I feel uncomfortable is because, especially here in the United States where this show is made and where I live, the system doesn't always work for others. In fact, usually doesn't, and only benefits those in power and reinforces pre-existing hierarchies. It's why you've seen things like in Star Trek Picard Season 1 and in Star Trek Discovery, and even a little bit in Strange New Worlds to a degree, that those shows are often critical of Starfleet and the Federation, an organization that itself was based out of the 1960s and 80s idealized American system in which those sort of Federation ideas were codified into Starfleet as a franchise.
You defy every stereotype the Federation has about Illyrians. You're an example to them. And to all of us.
What do we do when Starfleet finds out?
And in those current modern live-action shows, they are much more critical of the American system, reflecting our own modern-day distrust of American systems as well. And I love that those shows critique ourselves as opposed to coding problems within our society as alien cultures or in other. And so to come back to Lower Decks, which in some people's minds may uncritically show a system that mirrors the American judicial system doing right by a black captain, can feel like the series is remaining uncritical. But I also do think that it is worthwhile to sometimes highlight Trek's aspirational nature, as well as the show Lower Decks' consistent theme of trusting one's larger community and those around you. It's not necessarily about trusting the system itself, but believing in the better nature of humanity by believing that others around you can actually do the right thing and want to do the right thing. And this is a theme that gets reinforced throughout the entirety of Lower Decks' 3rd season. So, to my mind, I think it works, though I understand if people had a little bit of discomfort with it. But all in all, I think this is a fantastic premiere, and not just because we get horny alien sex goo.
It's an orgy?
Oh, I guess they were in search of a breeding ground.
Gene Roddenberry would be proud.
Even covered in alien sploof, there's no place I'd rather be.
Yeah.
Did I change cosplays? Yes, I did. Is this cosplay slightly too small for my boobs? Also, yes, we're gonna move on. If episode 1 was about starting Mariner's arc, episode 2 was about Boimler's. Boimler has grown a lot through season 1 and 2 to be someone who is less about following the letter of Starfleet's law to developing more confidence in his own voice. But in contrast to Mariner though, he's still not been willing to stand up for his own opinions in the face of dangerous situations or with those with more authority or dissenting views around him, which is a trait that is actually needed in a leader if Boimler wants to become a captain. So upon hearing criticism of his sheepishness during a Klingon Dungeons & Dragons game that is absolutely hysterical and gives us a wonderful Martok cameo, I am here for J.G. Hertzler.
I have honored my house, but will you?
Boimler then takes Tendy's advice to become bold, essentially leading him to do a mini version of the movie Yes Man starring Jimmy Carrey, which leads to some hilarious Trek-inspired situations.
By that sustained scream when I bowled you over, you were really wailing.
Thanks, I get a lot of practice.
In the end though, Boimler gets in over his head as he is hunted by a Predator-style alien who, by the way, hilarious animations on this guy. I adore him. But while initially seeming hesitant in this moment, Boimler realizes that the only way to survive, the only way to move forward, is to be bold and trust in himself, even if it does mean that he gets hit with a spear in the shoulder.
You better run, because now the hunted has become...
God!
Meanwhile, though, Mariner's arc continues beautifully as we see her under Captain Ransom's watch, not being willing to listen to Ransom's authority and rebelling against him to try to save her colleagues who are in danger on the planet below, at least so she believes, as they accidentally offended a wellness-based world.
You dare enter the sacred hole without an exposed navel?
There are indeed a lot of wellness-based worlds in Star Trek. I wish today in our society we could build healthy relationships with our own body norms, but there you go. But in the end, despite almost going AWOL, Mariner instead learns that she has to trust Ransom to do the right thing, because he will if she lets him, making her understand that it's okay to not always take on the burden of responsibility alone.
You were really impressive down there.
I will say the one critique that I have of this episode is a small one, and it's the depiction of Billups. A lot of fans have related to the chief engineer of the Cerritos as a potentially asexual character, with Season 2 showing him not only having a cultural reason for not wishing to have sex, as it would force him to leave Starfleet, but even beyond that, his earnest lack of desire to engage in sexual activity beyond this. This episode, however, seems to showcase him with a little bit more of an open sexuality than he's had in the past. I mean, for me, who, by the way, I am not asexual, so take my critique with a grain of salt, this could be showing him as a sex-positive asexual, someone okay with being around sex but not partaking in it, as we saw in his holodeck counterpart in Season 2, but I did see some of my asexual friends critiquing this characterization of Billups, as they felt it was a bit haphazard, especially since asexual representation is so limited on television and often misunderstood. So take that criticism for what you will. Also, we get a Kelvin timeline reference, which is, you know, come on, give me more Kelvin timeline references. I miss my Chris Pineovers. So, being honest, this wasn't a favorite episode of mine, not because it was terrible, but because it just didn't hit me as hard as the rest of them. There's a few things that I wasn't too fond of, such as Captain Freeman going on a petty little argument over accepting a gift that felt overlong as a joke and out of character for her.
Take the statue, young man.
No, I couldn't impose.
Take it.
No, you.
No.
Get it away.
It's yours.
But that being said, there is still a lot to love about this episode. First off, I loved seeing another, very clearly 1960s style Star Trekian planet that has, these weird orbs that can show you your fantasies. It kind of reminded me of the episode Shore Leave from the original series, and this did lead to some fun, introspective character moments, references, and jokes, as well as a cool Leah Brahms cameo. Which also, by the way, since we're on the topic of Leah Brahms here, I swear to God, if the writers of Star Trek Picard Season 3 end up showing that Geordi LaForge ended up marrying Leah Brahms, I am going to riot. Please don't do that to Geordi. The man deserves better than to end up with the one girl that he had a parasocial holodeck relationship with that one time. Show us that he has evolved as a person. Please, 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 please do not have Geordi LaForge end up with Leah Brahms. Anyways, that's a Star Trek Picard rant. Back to Lower Decks. I like that Mariner's fantasy with the orbs featured her current girlfriend Jennifer, showcasing that Lower Decks was not shying away from depicting Mariner's bisexuality or sexual desire, something that I was kind of worried about considering we hadn't seen a lot of Mariner and Jennifer at this point, because Star Trek has had a history of being mildly afraid of queerness, except for Star Trek Discovery, which is full on we're gonna be as queer as we fucking wanna be, you can deal with it, you transphobes, homophobes, whatever the phobes out there, but beyond that, Star Trek has had a little bit of a queer reticence, and I am excited to see that Lower Decks is not continuing that.
I'm fine being your hot Andorian girlfriend.
I also really loved that when the orb fantasies turned into characters' fears, the show not only gave us clown Klingons and Snakeborg, what? What? I did not know I needed clown Klingons and Snakeborg in my Star Trek. But also, it showed us that Mariner's biggest fear is Jennifer wanting commitment.
I want to be exclusive. I want us to grow old and boring and grow orchids together, babe.
Again, showcasing Lower Deck's subtle ability to highlight characters' arcs, like Mariner's distrust of committing herself to anything or anyone, or trusting those around her. And it did it with a fucking Andorian werewolf. I love Lower Decks. Look, I'm just gonna say it. If your Star Trek show does not feature Andorian werewolves from this point going forward, you failed as a Star Trek show. This is what I want out of my Star Trek. What does Star Trek become? Andorian werewolves. That's what it's become. That's not okay. That's not okay. Okay, Stan. My mic stand sucks. We also started to see Tendy's arc this season. Also, did I change cosplays in the middle of reviewing an episode where I also just changed cosplays? Yes, I did. We're moving on. For those of you who don't know, Tendy is my favorite character in not just Lower Decks, but possibly all of Star Trek. I adore her earnest joy in all things, her love of discovery and curiosity, and most importantly, her undying care for others around her. And my love for Tendy is why I literally bought a standee of Tendy. So I got this now to creep out my friends at parties. I hide her in a corner and it terrifies my friends. Her eyes are so huge in the dark. She is legit terrifying to friends. She is almost as terrifying as Jessie here. So yeah, am I the kind of Trekkie who has 2 standees of Star Trek characters in her home? It is just the person I am. Also, I do not know why there is such a huge height differential between these 2 standees, but I'm kind of here for it, you know? Anywho, we have seen Tendy throughout the series be incredibly assertive, especially when defending or helping others, yet less so when it came to her own self-confidence, something that I can deeply relate to. So I loved that her arc this season was finding that confidence in herself via her going through science officer training, leading her to eventually stand up to Captain Freeman in this episode and make her voice and her thoughts heard in a room where typically she would have remained silent.
Ensign, have you lost your mind?
Look at the damn rock!
That I will always love this episode, even though it's not my favorite. Speaking of episodes that I loved, I adored this one. The story of the Lower Deckers working together to stop the Delta Shifters from getting quarters together was fun, and it highlighted their camaraderie in the best way. And the ending of the episode where they decided not to take the new quarters because it would mean them splitting up, at least so they think, is adorable.
If even one of us takes that room, it'll break us up forever.
And you know who really deserves that?
Delta Shift.
Yeah, let's just walk away and let them ruin their friendship.
Beta shifters stick together.
We also got continuing highlights of Boimler's bold arc as he continued to, sometimes to his own safety's detriment, push outside his comfort zone and try new things.
It'll take someone bold to find out.
Boimler, no, that's a bad idea,
Anti-Grandpa!
No, Boimler, no!
This is also a Trekkie ship nerd's dream, as we got to see different areas of a starship from the inside that all of us had only dreamed of when we looked at the schematics as a little child going like, oh, I would love to see the inside of a deflector dish. Well, guess what? Lower Decks gave it to you, so how do you feel now, you nerds? I was that nerd. Also, to self-promote a little bit, after I recorded this review of Lower Decks, I actually got to sit down with Star Trek Lower Decks creator, Mike McMahon, and it was an awesome time talking with him. We nerded out and just ranted about Star Trek for a while, as well as talked about some of the things that I'm discussing in this review, including Mariner and Jennifer's sexuality and relationship, Billup's asexuality, as well as the sexy interiors of deflector dishes. So if you want to check out that interview, it is up right now over on Nebula and my Patreon, and will be coming soon over on my secondary channel, Jessiegender After Dark, in just a few days. And I highly recommend checking it out because it's just 2 nerds talking about Star Trek, and one of them happens to actually write about Star Trek, and the other one happens to be a weird dork. So, yeah, enjoy it. And here's a little clip to tease you with all of it.
Like, the voice performances are lending heart to it, and the music and these little moments are working really well. And then when one of the Jennifer stories is in the Deep Space Nine episode, which is so distractingly Deep Space Nine-y, you're not taking in that there's a thing that's like changing speed there at all. Like you're just, you're not doubting what we're telling you. So anyway, but like, again, it's wild that I get to do a show where this even comes up. Like it's that we've spent 20 minutes talking about a hot Andorian is fucking awesome. You know what I mean?
No, I love it. No, I it's one of the things that I really love about Lower Decks is like there is room for that interpretation. Also, we got to see some fun experimentation with new animation styles in this episode. And speaking of which, the animation in all of Lower Decks, but especially this season, continued to be freaking gorgeous and inventive. I mean, look at this scene where the Cerritos is turned into an ancient temple. I did not know that I needed aqueducts on a starship, but now I need aqueducts on a starship. That's right, Star Trek Picard Season 3. You heard me. The Titan A better have fucking aqueducts in it or I'm gonna be pissed. I will sick Jessie on you. On top of this, composer Chris Westlake's score continues to be superb. It is shocking how well he's able to evoke that brassy wonder of Star Trek The Next Generation score, and yet still feel kind of playful and energetic in a uniquely Lower Decksian way. Also, the voice acting is impressive as always. Everyone on the show is great, but in particular, the main four of Jack Quaid, Tawny Newsome, Noah Wells, and Eugene Cordero are all a well-oiled machine at this point. They capture the energy of their characters and can deliver both enthusiasm and emotional catharsis with equal weights. And you never actually feel like these actors are in voiceover booths separate from each other, but feel like they're people in a room together enjoying each other's company. And I think that clearly is a testament to how much these actors have come to know each other and found camaraderie in each other in the real world.
Because, you know, beta shifters stick together.
We still could have.
Well, we kind of got caught up in the all for one for all spirit.
That's the definition of one for all. One room for all of us.
Hey, relax, man.
I am relaxed. I just got back from a spa.
Also, I can listen to Jack Quaid's Boimler scream on repeat. I may have made it my text notification sound. But enough about Jack Quaid. We don't care about that ridiculous man who's kind enough to do 2-hour interviews with random YouTubers on the internet like a chump. Let's talk about more interesting things. Screw you, Jack Quaid, for being a nice person. Captain Freeman and the engineers needing to take a holiday was also a fun romp in this episode that emphasized Freeman's high-strung attitude, yet also showed the engineers' willingness to come together to help their captain, as well as show Starfleet crew members being endlessly competent. It is also an entirely too honest portrayal of engineers I know in real life who also relax by doing more engineering. Also, I will say the Dr. Shax into Anna holodeck scene was freaking hilarious and again showcases how Lower Decks continues character arcs even in the background of scenes. Like, we get a whole arc for Shax into Anna's relationship in this single scene. It just evokes so much that is happening off screen in the world of Lower Decks in such a beautiful way and makes me care about these characters more even when I only get like single scenes a season with these characters paid off in the background. Like, I fucking love this goddamn show. I won't hide the fact that Rutherford, while unique as a character, is probably my least favorite of the main four. While I adore his similar earnest kindness in the vein of Tendi, I'm just not a technical geek like him. And this is why I was shocked that this episode that focused on him was one of my favorites of the season. This episode finally built off the storyline set up at the end of season 2, with Rutherford discovering his implant was not his choice.
We programmed that in. He'll think it was elective.
As a character, Rutherford has always had a bit of an identity crisis, and in many ways has a imposter syndrome, a sense of self-doubt that he doesn't really belong, often feeling at odds with who he is now with his past self, and how he feels he has grown or hasn't grown.
The old me was better. I can't figure out his notes, and I'm like a year behind being friends with you. It's like I'm competing with my own ghost.
And in this episode, that imposter syndrome is made literal as we see what we ultimately learn is a past version of Rutherford taking over his body. A version of himself that is much more confidently arrogant in his abilities, be it with potential sexual partners or starships. Sorry, repeated myself there. Those are the same thing.
Hey, Rutherford, what's up?
No, don't talk to her. Everything now that I ran into you. Chill, huh? Those spots go all the way down?
Excuse me?
I loved that Rutherford, through his malfunctioning implant, has to prove to himself, both current and his past self, that he has grown as a person. We also get a couple wonderful Star Trek Voyager references with the Delta Flyer and the return of my second favorite Starfleet uniform from that one episode of Star Trek Voyager called Drive. That uniform is gorgeous and actually used to be my first favorite Starfleet uniform, but is now my second after a uniform that we will get to later this season. But I adore how Rutherford has shown that he's grown by not being a better engineer, but by his ability to form communities with his friends, again reinforcing Star Trek and Lower Decks' constant community-minded theming.
Wait, hold up. Who's that? We used our imagination to make anything we wanted, and I wasn't gonna race without my friends.
And then we end on the episode with a furthering of the mystery of who gave Rutherford his implant in the first place, showcasing Lower Deck's ongoing commitment to not only building out Star Trek lore and references, but also creating its own ongoing storylines. Meanwhile, in the B-plot, we continue Lower Deck's excellent world building and character arcs, with Boimler and Mariner doing Starfleet recruitment at a job fair, something that Starfleet would of course have to do. Do you think there's like a Starfleet recruitment officer that like has to go to like high schools and give like a weird like speech in front of the entire crowd of students like, hey, join Starfleet, we're great, and then like the kids heckle him and it's really kind of like awkward and weird for everybody, but the kids are kind of happy because they get out of class for a day. Is that what you think about when you think about watching Star Trek? Because that's what I think about. I also love that Mariner has a small rivalry / sexual tension with Petra, an archaeologist kind of like Indiana Jones or Vash from Star Trek The Next Generation, and Mariner ultimately, because of this, having to argue why Starfleet is an excellent organization to join, something that she would not have done in season 1 of this show. But now, because we are on this arc with her of her coming to accept that she is Starfleet through and through, she actually argues for it in this episode.
Prepare yourself for Warp 10 excitement. Discover the undiscovered country.
Meanwhile, Boimler's arc continues because he finally gets outspoken and opinionated, standing up to those damn aliens from Move Along Home and others, which ultimately lands him in the brig, something old Boimler from season 1 never would have done. And also, this joke?
The Doctor didn't spend 7 years in the Delta Quadrant for you to question his agency. He's got rights!
Is not a joke. We do not disrespect the Doctor here. Now, I bet you're asking at this point, does this even count as a cosplay? I don't even know. I just wanted to wear a sweatshirt because it is kind of cold in here. And I am also, by the way, very self-aware that wearing this sweatshirt makes me look like the mom who has shown up to the high school soccer game to like really excitedly cheer on her child a little bit more than is warranted. I thought I was going to end up being like the hot and sexy trans girl. I turned out to be the soccer mom trans girl. We live with what God gives us. And speaking of gods and prophets, it's Deep Space Nine. Yeah, see? I had a point. I got there in the end. Anywho, it's honestly been kind of frustrating how little love Deep Space Nine, arguably, actually scratch that, not arguably, Star Trek's best series ever, has been shown since Trek's modern revival in Star Trek Discovery. While modern Trek shows love to use ideas from Deep Space Nine like Section 31, they've paid much less respect for characters and overt references and returning to ongoing storylines from Deep Space Nine as these series have for, say, the original series, Voyager, or Next Generation. Deep Space Nine is the black sheep of the Star Trek franchise, even more so than Star Trek Enterprise at times, and so it feels fitting that it should appear in a show about the black sheep of Starfleet. First and foremost, I love this episode because it perfectly balanced its Lower Decks and Deep Space Nine elements. It would have been so easy for the episode that went to Deep Space Nine to get lost in the nostalgia for that series, yet it manages to tell a uniquely Lower Decks episode, but also feel like a Deep Space Nine episode, and also moving forward Deep Space Nine storyline just a little bit as well. First, the story of Freeman having to negotiate with a Gamma Quadrant race, yet getting caught up in shenanigans with Quark, played again by the beautifully returning Armin Shimon, feels like a fun season 2 or 3 Deep Space Nine B-plot, where we get to see like weird shenanigans on the station and our favorite little capitalist goblin just messing with Odo all the time. Yet we also get to catch up with Kira Nerys, played again by the much missed Nana Visitor, and seeing her in charge of the station showed us that Deep Space Nine had changed since its series finale. Yes, it is not a huge push forward for the storyline of Deep Space Nine. It's not the return of Sisko or a checkup on the Dominion or seeing Kira become a Vedic that I feel so many of us want from a proper Deep Space Nine continuation, but Lower Decks never was going to deliver that. Like, Alex Kurtzman probably would have like said, I will fire myself if you do that. But it is something. Though I am still upset we didn't get a Gare Shear confirmation.
Good day to you, Doctor. I'm so glad to have made such an interesting new friend today.
Like, come on, Mike McMahon, we all know our favorite former fascist lizard man and our genetically engineered Dr. Neurodivergent boy are fucking off screen. We're all aware of it. We just need someone to tell us it, because Rick Berman Sherman wouldn't. Rick Berman sure wouldn't. Lost the thread there because I said Rick Berman Sherman. Fuck Rick Berman. Anyways, Kira's back and forth with Shax feels perfect for those two former Bajoran freedom fighter terrorists.
You took one for me at Dakaro.
No, I mean Dakaro Prime, the one with the little trees.
I don't remember that. No way.
And we also get to see the recurring Admiral Buenamigo, who appeared first in the premiere episode of this season, and whose name means good friend in Spanish. Because I, like the writers of Lower Decks, also passed my first year in Spanish in high school. And I'm sure Buenamigo is going to be a great dude. It's in his name. It's not foreshadowing at all. Yet Lower Decks not only did all of this Deep Space Nine stuff, but still managed to give us the most poignant stories in the episode to its own characters, Tendi and Mariner. Here again, we see Tendi face her discomfort with her Orion heritage, which is defined by its cultural reliance on piracy, as she encounters an Orion Starfleet officer who loves to talk about being an Orion pirate.
Hey, this calls for a little pirate shanty. Tandy, sing along, I know you know it. Where's cold and dark in the void of space? Orions take from every race.
Yet I adore that when push comes to shove, we see that this Orion officer was just trying to live up to the ideal of an Orion as he grew up outside of Orion culture.
And everything I know about Orions I learned from the Hollow novels. I have bad ones too, the ones with the boobs on the cover.
He kind of reminds me of Worf, a character who romanticizes a culture because he's at once a part of it and yet an outsider from it. Yet, Tendi in this moment, when she finally is able to push back against this guy, reveals that she's not afraid of being an Orion pirate because she's terrible at it. In fact, she kicks ass, as we see. In fact, that moment where Tendi screams and the guy just like nopes out of there, one of the funniest moments of the season. But being a pirate is not who Tendi is, nor who she wants to be. And this sequence continues Tendi's arc because it shows her becoming more confident in who she is by showing to herself what she isn't, even if she would be excellent at it. Also, indulge me my headcanon here for a second, but Tendi is a trans woman. Not only does she repeatedly say she does not produce the female Orion pheromones that we learned in Star Trek Enterprise is characteristic of the biological sex for Orion cis women.
Easy. I'm starting to feel some of those aggressive female pheromones firing off.
We don't all have those.
But we also know that Tendi doesn't feel at home in her culture.
You'll do what I tell you to do, you dumb-faced jerk.
Holy crap, who are you right now?
It's an Orion thing. It actually makes me really uncomfortable.
Kind of like she wasn't accepted by them for who she is. She also has a literal dead name that she doesn't like people using.
Anything for you, Mistress of the Winter Constellations.
Mistress of the Winter Constellation? Okay, you gotta do this on the Cerritos.
Don't tell anyone. That's a name I left behind long ago.
Tendi is trans. I'm claiming her now. Thank you for coming to my Tendi talk. Actually, sorry, I'm not done yet. There's still more episodes to review. At the same time, we also get to see Jennifer and Mariner's relationship, highlighting an LGBTQ-focused story. Here, though, we see that Mariner wants to grow and be supportive of her girlfriend, trying to be the ideal partner.
Because if they didn't like me, you'd get mad, and then this wouldn't work out.
Beckett, I like that you don't take shit from anyone.
Yet we also see Jennifer wanting Mariner to be the rebel and even Phaser her best friends. It's an adorable sequence that at first reads that Jennifer wants Mariner to just be herself, but as we see later this season, it subtly showcases that Jennifer might have actually romanticized and somewhat fetishized Mariner's rebelliousness and not see who Mariner actually is and who she is growing to be beyond that. But also, this was an adorable Mariner moment, and I'm here for it. It was cute. Also, this episode captured the energy of being the only bisexual at the lesbian party.
I call this piece the Kobayashi Maroon. There's no right way to dance it.
I have been there. Oh boy, this was a controversial episode, wasn't it? Typically, Lower Decks makes its convention-breaking episodes the 9th episodes of its season, but instead we got it here in episode 7 with one focused entirely on everyone's least favorite sentient machine exocomp from season 1, Peanut Hamper. We pick up with her right where we left off, where she had chosen to abandon the community of the Cerritos in favor of self-preservation in the season 1's big finale. It's almost as if the show has theming. The episode then slowly unfolds to seemingly take Peanut Hamper on a journey of redemption, uncovering that caring for the community and others and ultimately letting yourself feel part of a greater whole can be more fulfilling than individual self-interest. And the show does this in the most Star Trekian way possible, with Peanut Hamper being trapped in a pre-warp civilization that she judges to be less advanced because of its lack of technology.
Oh, I beg of your pardon.
Yeah, it's just something we space folks say when we're stranded on a backwater planet with no culture.
A sense of explicit judgment by Peanut Hamper that reflects the sometimes implicit judgment sometimes found in Star Trek series of yore that tend to look at pre-technological civilizations as savage and primitive that mirrored the series' sometimes colonialist implications, with it being an American TV show reflecting American values. Yet, Peanut Hamper and our expectations are subverted when we learn that this owl civilization, which by the way is hilarious.
Oh, Peanut Hamper, I can't help but be full of song when I'm with you.
Oh, Rhoda, sing for me. You scared the living shit out of me.
Isn't pre-warp, but has chosen to reject technology, believing it led to war and antagonism, reflecting a more pessimistic view of technology than Star Trek's more hopeful technological future. Even further, we ultimately learn that Peanut Hamper's seeming redemption is actually a ruse, one that she pretended to go on and went through the motions of in order to gain her place back in Starfleet. She didn't earnestly care for others, only for herself. And I saw a lot of Trekkies after watching this episode upset at that arc for her character, feeling it went against Star Trek's values of people being able to learn and grow. But I also think that Peanut Hamper's lack of internal earnest desire to change was necessary to showcase. It showed that to want to grow, one must actually be self-reflective. You can't just go through the steps of redeeming yourself, you have to honestly wish to change too. It's a subtle distinction that we in our culture today often forget, allowing people to make apologies without holding themselves personally accountable. They go through the motions, but they don't actually try to change. Finally, the episode also showcased that the primitive culture was not to be saved by Starfleet, but was actually able to save itself, having agency in protecting itself. Again, subtly critiquing Trek's typically benevolent yet condescending colonialist implications that we sometimes see accidentally in other series. Oh, and the ending of the episode set up a team-up between series villains Peanut Hamper and Jeffrey freaking Combs's Agamus, again showing Lower Deck's commitment to building up several ongoing background storylines. Hey, I'm still wearing the same exact cosplay, because this sweater is comfortable and I actually don't want to change out of it. This was my favorite episode of the season by a hot mile. Like season 1's Crisis Point, that was itself a send-up of Star Trek's more bombastic film franchise entries, this episode does the same, but with Boimler writing the storyline instead of Mariner. And first and foremost, quite literally, there was a reference to every single Star Trek movie in this episode. There was the Wrath of Khan style science center, the Voyage Home time travel storyline, a character supposedly dying and coming back to life like in Search for Spock, a search for a godlike entity from Star Trek V, cameos on a farm from original series actors like in Star Trek Generations, random ancient Earth space artifacts like in the motion picture. I could go on. There was even a reference to the Romulan melty face device from Star Trek Nemesis. But beyond that, these uniforms that mixed Deep Space Nine and Lower Decks looks are fantastic, and they are now my favorite Star Trek uniform. Like, legitimately, I loved them so much, I got one tailor-made for me for cosplay. I don't have it yet, I would have loved to wear it for this video, but I'm excited for my tailor to mail it to me. Sadly, my tailor is not Garrick, but what I love most about this episode is that it's not just a list of references to Star Trek movies, but an earnest character story centered upon Boimler, and one of the show's most emotional. After learning of the random death of his clone duplicate, Boimler understands that life has no inherent meaning, and has an existential crisis as a result, looking for purpose in the random and meaningless.
He died for no reason.
I guess I was trying to make all of this matter because then I would matter.
Like, literally, he looks for the purpose in the algorithmic, as we expand holodeck lore here.
And the answer is this answer that's about to be coming now.
He's stalling. The holodec's just building this dude a backstory on the fly. We are way off book here.
Which is such an excellent world-building element to add into Star Trek lore. I fucking love that this is the idea of how holodecks work. It makes perfect sense, and I love it. But this all culminates in Mariner, after being initially annoyed at Boimler, coming to realize that he needs her and helps him through his crisis. Which in turn itself leads Boimler to have a heat-stroke-induced vision of George freaking Takei himself, who, in a beautiful tribute that seemed to sadly presage the recent death of Nichelle Nichols, as well as the rest of the original series cast, reminded Boimler that life's meaning comes from the friends and community that we make along the way, not in some predestined tremendous purpose or saving the universe.
The randomness of death is merely a reflection of the unexpected joys we find in life.
It's a beautiful story and a beautiful lesson that eschews nihilism in the face of the existential meaninglessness of the universe for hope in the most Trek way possible. Do you see now why I love Lower Decks so goddamn much? We also get a beautiful, earnest moment for Tendi, as she learns that her growing self-assertiveness all season has developed into a desire to be a leader, a captain in specific. And this realization comes from her feeling disrespected by Rutherford, who's just having a fun holodeck time. Yet, as soon as he realizes how important this actually is to Tendi, he instantly snaps into support of her, no questions asked.
You don't even care about this story at all!
You want to be a captain?
Yes!
Oh, wow. I've never said that out loud before. Yes, I do!
Tendi, you'd be a great captain. You don't need a movie to prove that.
Really?
Are you kidding? I'd want you as my captain anytime.
Oh, I can't even tell you what that means to me.
Captain Vesper, your crew is ready. What are your orders?
It's moments like that that remind me why I love this sweet, fantastic little show. And it's because how much these people constantly support each other in earnest, caring ways. And also at the end of the episode, we learned that William Boimler is not actually dead, which I'm intrigued by, because duplicate storylines are some of my favorite in all of science fiction, because I love exploring how someone's life experience can take them down one path versus the other. Star Trek kinda did this with Thomas Riker, but I think my favorite storyline like this is Farscape's twin Crichton story arc. Check it out if you haven't. It's freaking great. I adore it, and I always cry at the last scene in that storyline. And I hope that Lower Decks is able to do something similar and doesn't just make William Boimler evil because reasons. Alright, being honest, I have to say this was my least favorite episode of the season because it's not bad, but at times it feels a bit forced in what it was trying to do. But let's start with the good. Admiral Buenamigo makes an appearance to give the Cerritos Project Swing-By, a mission to revisit prior planets Starfleet had visited before, which Freeman takes incredibly seriously, wanting to show off for a visiting reporter, who by the way is wearing a CBS logo on her chest. Mike McMahon biting the hand that feeds him. This allows us to nostalgically revisit the planets from the Next Generation's Prime Directive episode, Symbiosis, where Picard radically changed the planet's culture and then just straight up left.
Believe me, Beverly, there was only one decision.
I just hope it was the right one.
And we may never know.
'Cause that is Star Trek. We don't care about the ramifications of our actions. Whee! But the fact that we are returning these storylines, again, highlights Lower Deck's willingness to critique prior Star Trek storytelling. But it turns out that everything's okay on this planet, much to Freeman's chagrin.
There's really no need for this visit. Now, excuse me, but I'm late for my 10K.
Captain, do you anticipate all Project Swing-By missions will be this superfluous?
But at the same time, Freeman is also worrying that Mariner, who has always been rebellious and anti-Starfleet, might ruin things for the crew in front of the reporter.
This reporter coming on board, I don't want us to look like fools. Mariner!
All of this goes to show how people around Mariner have yet to take the time to recognize that she has grown from who she is in Season 1. This whole season has been about Mariner coming to trust others and trust Starfleet and her place within it. So much so that it turns out that instead of saying mean things to the reporter like everyone thought she had, she actually said sweet things about her found family.
Well, there's a family you're born into, right? And then the family you choose. I've got both here on the Cerritos.
It's earnestly adorable, yet no one, not even Jennifer, her girlfriend, believes her.
Jennifer, I need you to believe me. I didn't do anything wrong.
How am I supposed to trust you? You tell everyone all the time, this is who you are.
Yeah, but you know me better than that.
I really don't.
And this is, as we saw earlier, Jennifer hasn't seen Mariner for who she is now, but for who she thinks she is. She still sees her, and again has somewhat crystallized and fetishized her as this rebellious woman, instead of realizing that Mariner is actually growing as a person. It underscores that no one besides Mariner's friends in Beta Shift have taken the time to truly see her. And it leads to them ostracizing her so much that she has to leave Starfleet.
Rude. Of course we do, usually, but this one here resigned.
Resigned? What? No! Are you sure?
Yep.
It's hurtful, and while I will say it does reflect Mariner's story arc and her relationship to the community around her, I do feel like it was a little bit forced and a little bit over the top to get to the storyline there, but I understand where the thinking comes from. However, the crew does visit the second planet, and we get a great Breen cameo. Who doesn't love the Breen? Our little weird technology-talking head boys. I don't know what I'm saying. That's the Breen. We love the Breen. We stand the Breen here. Anyways, it leads us to learn that Buenamigo himself has been building an automated starship, the Texas class, which he hopes will replace the California class ships like the Cerritos. Which all leads us to... This episode was such a great payoff to the entire season as a whole, and showcases to me why I not only love Lower Decks, but am in constant awe at how much this show manages to do with just 22 minutes. This episode pays off tons of storylines and arcs, while also having its own themes and epic moments, and does something even more subtle that I think others might not have noticed. First, we have Buenamigo arguing that Starfleet should get rid of the California class with his automated Texas-class ships, highlighting Lower Deck's constant critical nature of cold machine calculations with characters like Peanut Hamper, Agamus, and Badgie. While I do think that Star Trek should be a little less wary of algorithms and artificial intelligences like we see with characters like Data, or even in Star Trek Discovery with the USS Discovery becoming sentient, I do actually like that this is an element of Lower Decks highlighting that Starfleet is not a cold function that anyone can do, but about the people who make up Starfleet, the empathetic human beings who do the job. Also, this battle between the two starship classes does canonically prove that California is better than Texas. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, Alex Kurtzman does. But all this leads to a second contact race between the California and Texas class ships to see who is better. Yet the California class technically loses because Tendi stops to ensure that they aren't accidentally possibly killing potential life on a planet, something that Buenamigo's ships don't do.
We would have won if I hadn't defended the life of some inert dust.
When secondary scans find life, you have to drop everything. That's like the entire point of the Prime Directive.
This showcases again that empathy is the core important value of Starfleet, and also pays off Tendi's arc this season of standing up for herself and for science, showcasing her assertiveness. Finally, though, we also get the revelation that Buenamigo, our good friend, is actually a bad friend, as he's the one who gave Rutherford his implant that we have been seeing in the background this whole season, and stole his algorithm to make his automated ships. And this is the same algorithm that made the murderous Badgie way back in Season 1.
Deactivating dependence. I will burn your heart in a fire.
Alito, stand down! Stand down!
Whoops. So not only was this paying off Buenamigo's constant appearances throughout the season, but also Rutherford's storyline, as he's able to save the Cerritos just in time from Buenamigo's algorithm. I will say there is a little bit of a plot hole here because we see in Rutherford's flashback that Buenamigo is like a lieutenant commander or whatever, and now he's an admiral, which means like within the course of just a few years, Buenamigo went from lieutenant commander to an admiral, which seems like a lot. Either that or Rutherford's like really fucking old for an ensign, but either way, I still like this as a payoff. We also get an appearance by a sexy Sovereign class ship, the USS Van Critters, named after the VP of Star Trek brand development, John Van Critters. But beyond all of that, as the crew continues to escape, we get a bold Boimler payoff as he stands up to Captain Freeman and tells her to listen to Shax, paying off his whole arc this season.
People, we're missing something! Shut up and listen to Shax! Mr. Boimler!
Please. Lieutenant, what did you say?
I kinda said we should eject the warp core.
But then, we get Shax being allowed to eject the warp core to save the ship, a payoff to a joke that appeared in the series pilot.
What are my options?
I recommend we detonate the entire warp core, Captain.
What? No!
And it feels so amazing when it happens. Like, I was legit crying when Shax got to eject that core.
I've dreamed of doing this for so long.
It was so beautiful. And on top of all of this, we get Mariner, who went off to be with Petra's treasure hunting adventures for a while, realizes that, after a Picard reference, that she doesn't actually work best outside of the system, but actually likes being in Starfleet, that it is her home, and comes back to save the entire Cerritos crew. I will say Mariner jumping back into Starfleet is a tad easy, but I still really like it, and I like the fact that she is forgiving everyone on the ship except for Jennifer, who she explicitly does not talk to, because that girl deserves it. As much as I liked seeing Jennifer and Mariner together, I hope they do not get together, but please still showcase Mariner's bisexuality. I will say some people may have problems with the way this relationship ended, but I liked that this show showcased a messy bisexual relationship. Too often, especially in Star Trek, LGBTQ characters are a bit too clean, prim, and proper because it feels like it needs to showcase the best version of representation for everyone, which I don't think is a bad impulse, but sometimes human beings are messy, and I like seeing a messy LGBTQ relationship, and it's great. But on top of all of this, we also get the entire California class of starships made up of cameos from characters that we've seen across seasons 1 and 2 of Lower Decks come together to save the day, showing that Starfleet, even those who are seen as the underdogs, is all about saving each other. If all that wasn't enough, we finally get the appearance of T'Lyn, the Vulcan from season 2 that everyone has been hoping to see come onto the Cerritos. Not only that, T'Lyn seemingly is going to be under Tendy's tutelage, and I cannot wait to see a Vulcan bounce off of Tendy's boisterousness. This also does highlight one thing that I hope Lower Decks Season 4 builds off of, though, that our main characters on Lower Decks get promoted. It's been 3 seasons, and these characters have stayed ensigns the entire time, and I think they've all shown that they can move beyond that. Not only that, I also think it's a necessary step for their character arcs, so hopefully Season 4 of Lower Decks doesn't do the Star Trek thing of reinforcing the status quo, but actually allows our characters to evolve and get promoted. But on top of all of this, I did say there was one subtle thing that I think other people forgot to notice. Lower Decks is a show that is known for all of its callbacks and references and cameos to other Star Trek series, and yet, unlike Season 1, which featured a Jonathan Frakes cameo, or Season 2, which had Selena Gomez, this finale was all about Lower Decks and what Lower Decks itself has built within the Star Trek universe. We didn't get like a Janeway appearance or an Archer appearance, which I would have loved, but this finale just had confidence in Lower Decks itself. This is all why when people, even people that I love, like a particular bearded YouTuber friend of mine, tell me they dislike Lower Decks because they think it's all just references, I think they miss the point of what lies underneath all those references in Lower Decks. Lower Decks is a show that may take overt joy in its geeky, comprehensive knowledge of the Star Trek universe, but it has the beating heart that understands what Star Trek has always been about: community, friendship, and caring. I have made no bones that Lower Decks is my favorite airing Star Trek series. I've made a video about that. Actually, 2 videos. Maybe 3. Maybe a lot of them. But it's for good reason. It's a series that captures everything I love and need in the world today. It's endless pure love for Star Trek, which just fills me with joy with its constant references and building out of Star Trek lore, yet it also critiques it at the same time, willing to hold up a mirror to the weirdest and sometimes misguided aspects of the franchise. Yet what I love most about Lower Decks is its ability not to get lost in its self-reflectiveness, but to also boldly forge its own path through the franchise, creating its own unique stories and characters who feel, despite the show only having 10, 22-minute episodes per season, right up there with the most complex and nuanced of Trek characters. But even more so, the show upholds the core of every Star Trek series: an earnest joy in community, a belief in our better selves, and a hope that no matter how much we stumble as either individuals or a society, that there will always be a brighter future ahead of us. It's this exact feeling why I felt the need to make a over hour-long ramble about why I loved Lower Decks Season 3. Like I said at the top of this video, I have been somewhat anxious and kind of depressed lately at not only the state of the world, but a lot of the things that I've had to just mentally dive into in my professional work on this channel. And sometimes I just need to have something that reflects to me the hope that I wish to feel about our world today. Lower Decks does that, not just because it shows us a brighter future, but I know is made by people living today, in the same world that we all exist in today. Lower Decks reminds me that there are people and communities out there who don't just have this doomeristic, hyper self-centered worldview, but actually believe in each other, take delight in each other, and love to connect with others, and like to showcase that joy to all of us. Lower Decks is the show that I need, that I think we all need today. While it's often seen as the black sheep of the Star Trek family, Lower Decks, to me, is Trek and humanity at its best. All right, everybody, thank you for surviving this chaotic energy video. Like I said, I really just needed to do it for my own mental health. It has been a shitty few weeks. I'm going to wrap this out because this video is already overlong and the algorithm is not going to be friendly to it. So I'll just say this. Thank you for being wonderful. Thank you for being amazing. Thank you for supporting me. I promise you I will get out of this kind of mental funk that I've been in the past few weeks, but I am just going to need a few weeks to just not burn out, and doing videos like this kind of helps that. If you do want to support me doing what I do here, whether it be these weird videos or the larger, more important videos that I do on this channel, please support me on Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe and you get the random bag of whatever this channel is here. And you can support me on Nebula. I have a podcast where I talk about Babylon 5 with my friend Vera Weil from the Council of Geeks channel. And that is it, I believe. Love you all. Take care of yourselves. Anyways, I'm going to go hang out with Tendi. Sorry, Jessie. Okay, no, actually, I'm going to take Jessie too. I love you as well. She's my favorite. Hello there. Get it? I did the thing that Ian McGregor does. Anywho, now that I've been a giant nerd, I want to say thank you to all of my patrons who make this video and all of my videos possible. Legitimately, especially after the stuff that happened with my channel last month and dealing with YouTube, I want to reiterate how important my patrons are to me. Like, thank you. I could not do any of this without all of you. So just really, truly, and honestly, thank you for making my life possible and for making me not have to be endlessly terrified of YouTube and all of that stuff. So patrons, just mwah, I adore you. And with that said, an extra special thank you, as always, to Jolene Cassidy, Troy Stahl, Catherine Lambeth, Joe Hermanhold, Carrie Allen Foss, Emily Skorksdaughter, Miranda Janelle, Lily Gray, Ashley Allen, Bokikio, Jason Nublar, Heather Long, Elysia Tativi, Dark Excalibur 42, Barbie Ann Rounds, Claire Newsom, Jack McAllen, Stephen Kleinard, Jem Shin, Matt Chung, Barba Ruski, Mary Mello, Allie Gobert, Super Desi, Randy Thompson, Alan Altman, Spooky Heather, Sylvia, Wellington Marcus, Meadow Whisperer, D. Cassaray, Brits Krieg, Lily Blanley, Tiffany Danger, Vincent Ellington, Chloe Dollier, Felicia Tost, Joseph Dewey, James Krivda, Dominic Noble, Elizabeth Christensen, Gordon Alexander, Jose Connolly, Grace, Jennifer Fuss, Denitch, Andy with an I, Sean McKenzie, Nathaniel Fronten, Sonia Roper Doe, Hellscape, Wanderer, Jolene Cassidy, Eric Knatz, Transit Toronto, Ferengato, Mag, Ryan Hunter, Pan the Fabulous Ferret, Wendell Zabizzle, Sasha M, Raincoat Corin, Matt, Shield Maiden, 4444, Sig Corbett, W. Randy, Edie, Damian Rice, Spencer Brownlee, Drew Buck, Angie Pugh, Stephen Richardson, Tangy Wilson, Melinda Walters, John Witherby, Naisa Marie, Fox E, Zach Prax, Cyber Quaker, Beatrix Purvis, Autumn Jennings, Lysa, Kevin Frotag, Sean Piper, Maddie H, Odd Just Odd, Flynn, Silly Christie, Epsilon is greater than, Gretchen Badger, Flying Kata Dragon, Devin Camerlock, Sarah Leslie Hutchkins, Casual Observer, Patricia Cromptitz, The Mighty Jin Jojo, Marinia Hervey, Blueberry Hill, William Stewart, Julia Sweeney, Jess Johnson, Sarah Bystam, Sarah Lemero, Sky Skinner, Nathan Steele, Blue Mix Sophist, Laura Demeraux, Melly Ann Winters Good, Kurt Malin, Vertex Kai, Jordy Larisas, Here Reeses, Chris Hurst, Becky Spark, Zamula Kincaid, Troy Stull, The Tipsy Changeling, Jason Knott, Maeve, Celestia Dawn, Teresa, Strawberry Pup Tart, Geek Filter, Leotha Boyd, Holly Walters, Nikki Gordon Bloomfield, Crit Fax, Luna T, Tony the DC Nerd, Grumpy Dragon 75, Zane Sulis, K-Liss, Alexandra Lombach, It's a Bug, Not a Feature, Ulrich Bogdan, Elizabeth Gradble, Abigail Marie, Unicorn Floof, James Hodge, and Corian Vale Honkinen. You all rock. Again, thank you so much. Mwah. Kisses to all of you and to all of my patrons. Seriously, could not do this without all of you. You are amazing. Goodbye there. I'm still in frame. Still in frame. I didn't think this through.